Welcome to lesson 3. Let's get started, shall we? Years ago, as I wrote my first book, I was fascinated with the concept of IKIGAI. IKIGAI. It's a Japanese word, and it roughly translates to the reason why you wake up in the morning. And as I was writing my book, I began to understand more of its origin and power. Its origin is Okinawan, and it actually turns into a word that the Japanese use that means the reason why I wake, the reason why I wake up every day. And so it's this reason for living that most of us need to uncover. Earlier in the series, we talked about how you use a scale that someone else gave you to measure your own success. And it's very frustrating to know that that scale doesn't work as we get older and older. And that malaise that we feel, amplified mediocrity, that taste that we have in our mouth is because that scale doesn't work. It's not meant to work for us. It's meant to keep us in a very specific role that doesn't express who we are or how we should live our lives or the purpose that we have for the reason why we even exist here on this planet. Often if we think if we can just get more, we'll be okay. But Ikigai, our reason for being, supersedes that. The reason why this is so important is because if you know who you are and you know why you exist, then everything changes. But if you don't know who you are, if you don't understand the reason why you wake up every morning, then you're going to fall or succumb to amplified mediocrity. If you have a purpose so powerful that you don't need an alarm clock to wake up, would you find yourself looking at life with a different lens? My grandfather took care of my grandmother and my father and his brother and sister, and he had a reason to wake up. And for a lot of people, that reason is good enough to take care of their families, to love those who have been entrusted in their care. But it wasn't for me. It just wasn't. I love my family, and I did everything I could to raise them well. My children are successes today because I put my whole heart into them. But my heart's joy lies in teaching, which is what I'm doing right now. And as a parent, I love teaching my own children. As a leader in the Air Force, I love teaching. In fact, I discovered my Ikigai while I was in the Air Force, and I was reflecting on my life when I wrote the book, and I said, man, this thread of teaching over and over again just kept coming through all of the experiences that I was sharing in my book. So eventually, I took that love and I turned it into a business that allows me to do what I'm doing right now. And I'm loving to share this with you. In other words, Ikigai changed everything for me because I understood that it was the core reason why I exist. And I want to be able to tap into that all the time, not just in what I do for a living, but what I do in family, in business, in love, in my spiritual walk. Everything hinges around Ikigai. And for me, now that I'm able to express it, it helps me define what I need to do next. The name of this lesson is Ikigai, the key to everything. And one of the reasons why I named it that is because I'm smashing together two concepts, and we're going to talk about both of them. Ikigai, the purpose or the reason why I exist, and then the key to everything, which is something a little bit different, but I put the two together and I'll show you how it works in a few minutes. You see, the scale that we're using came from family or friends, and believe me, my friends were a big influence on my life. They told me what was cool, and I, trying to be cool, listened to them. And they would say, you're doing this right, or you're doing this wrong, you're cool now, or you're not cool now. They would either shun you or include you based on your coolness. And that scale wasn't for me, and it got me in trouble when I was 12 years old. That's another story I'd love to tell in another time. But one of the things that it also showed me was if I wanted to stay inside the cool factor, the cool zone, I had to act in certain ways. Well, those ways weren't my Ikigai. In fact, those ways were counter to what I really should have been doing with my talent, time, and energy. If you spend your time working toward Ikigai, you'll know that the process helps you get ever closer to the reason why you want to leap out of bed every morning. But it's so hard to know that because you are influenced by this scale that other people tell you is correct. Eventually, sooner rather than later, if you're being honest with yourself, you'll uncover it and embrace who you are and your true reason for being. And I say the word uncover because it's different than discover. Uncover means it's already there, but it's been layered over. And the paper that society and family and friends put on your true reason for being actually hurts, doesn't help you decide how to live your best life. It doesn't help you become a brazen creative. With my friend Bryant Johnson, who is a tailor and style consultant and philosopher, he brought to me the key to everything. And I'm going to transition from Ikigai to the key to everything and show you how the two work together. See, Ikigai is the motivating force behind why we exist. It's the thing that wakes us up in the morning. If we uncover it and understand it, then we'll leap out of bed with a joy that allows us to express it in multiple ways each day. But the outcomes that we have been subject to often come from not understanding either that, the key, or the Ikigai, or understanding how the key to everything fits together with it. So I'm going to show you how the key to everything works with Ikigai to create a life where, as a brazen creative, you're tapping into your potential on a daily basis and you're making the most out of each opportunity to express who you are and why you exist. You see, the key to everything is broken into two main parts. We're going to talk about one and then the other. The first part I call free your engine. And when you free your engine, what you're really doing is you're talking about the things that go into your mind, the inputs that we manage. And inputs are things like media, magazines, newspaper, radio, television, the friends that you keep, your associations. They're the things that you say to yourself, the experiences you have, and then what you say to yourself about those experiences. Those inputs shape your thoughts. And so as you are looking at how to create an outcome, an expression of your Ikigai is the proper is an outcome that we all should want, then you have to start at the inputs and take a look at what's there. And so the first part, called free your engine, is really being able to say to ourselves, let's take a look at what goes into our mind. And those inputs are what directly influence our thoughts. So if we start with the inputs and we look at media, we look at associations, we look at our self-talk, we look at our experiences, and we begin to shape those, then we'll begin to shape the thoughts that we have every day. The inputs must change, or we'll find ourselves looking at a picture that is not only imperfect but a bit frightening. And we will be scared because some of our old priorities, things that have never been in line with what we want, are going to start to be subject to change. So in part one, called Free Your Engine, the key to everything shows us that we have to look at inputs first, and then we have to look at the thoughts that those inputs influence. And if you think something long enough, over time, it becomes a belief. So the first part of the key to everything is sort of thought work. It's inputs, thoughts, and beliefs. When we look at those three things together, we begin to see something fascinating happen. We begin to understand that freeing our engine begins not with thinking different thoughts, but actually opening the door to different inputs. Inputs that should reflect our Ikigai, the reason why we wake up. And I'll tell you, if you want to be a healer, like a doctor or a clergy member, a counselor, you shouldn't be watching, say, gossip television, reality TV. Those don't go together. What you really want to do is begin to surround yourself with the kind of inputs that allow you to think thoughts that a healer would think. You would read the trade journals and magazines, you would look up articles and refer to stories on the internet, and your current events would be shaped by that. And so your inputs would change, and then your thoughts would change. And if you think something long enough, it becomes a belief. And the funny thing about beliefs that most people don't know is that once you habitually think a thought, it becomes a belief. And beliefs are like concrete. They don't change very easily. Beliefs are thoughts that we habitually think that begin to influence how we see the world. Our beliefs help interpret the events around us and how we respond to those events. We will try, as human beings, to consistently respond to things around us the same. We want to be the same all the time. Our beliefs help us do that. And our thoughts create beliefs. So if we think the same thing long enough, I'm not creative. I'm not creative. Pretty soon you'll believe you're not creative, and when an opportunity to be creative comes, you will not be creative because you believe you're not creative because that's all you thought about yourself. So the hard part of this, in the first part of the key to everything, is looking at all of the thought work, starting with beliefs, or starting with inputs, and working our way to beliefs. The funny thing about beliefs is that once they're in concrete, they influence our actions in ways that we cannot really understand until we look at them with a different lens. The thing about beliefs is they tend to be rigid, but the circumstances of our life change. So now we have this frustration that we feel, this malaise that I've talked about in Amplified Mediocrity. Our beliefs and our reality no longer match. And in the second part of the key to everything, we're going to talk about that a little bit. So let's go back over the first part. Free your engine is what I titled that part, right? Part one, it's all thought work. We have to manage our inputs. Our inputs determine how we think, or our thoughts. Our thoughts then, if we habitually repeat those thoughts over time, they become beliefs. And beliefs are like concrete, they're hardened. Now, funny thing about beliefs is, once you have a hardened belief, acting against it will cause physiological or psychological discomfort. You, as a human being, rarely act against what you believe. And when you do, you'll immediately feel some psychological or physiological discomfort. There are people, myself included, if I go against what I believe is true, I will feel it in my gut. And if we consistently feel this tension between what we believe and how we act, we end up hurting ourselves. People have ulcers and heart disease, and they get hypertension because their beliefs and their actions do not match. What should happen is belief should motivate action. Either motivate you not to do something or motivate you to do something. And so when we have this frustration where thoughts and beliefs are at loggerheads, we have to figure out how to resolve that. And so what usually happens, because beliefs are in concrete, is our actions will change to fit the beliefs, because that psychological or physiological discomfort is so great. The second part of the key to everything is, and your caboose will follow. This actually is a rephrase or paraphrase of an old saying, free your mind and your behind will follow. And I wasn't allowed to use the cuss word, and I wanted to use the cuss word, but my sister, who helped me with this course, told me I couldn't cuss in it. So if you see me use some other euphemisms, you'll know why, because she came along. And I say thank you to her for helping me with this, but also for making sure I didn't cuss. Actions are the things we do every day. And as I said, actions, whether we intend them or not, are dictated by beliefs. So the problem we have is, if our actions need to change and our beliefs have not, we have this frustration or this tension that we have to resolve. And the way we resolve it normally under amplified mediocrity is to change our actions and not our beliefs. But if we're going to attack our beliefs, which we should if we really want a different outcome, then we have to go back to inputs. But once we begin to shape the inputs, then all of a sudden the second half of the key to everything begins to apply in a different way. And that is that now we have the outer manifestation, or the reality, right? The first part is thought, the second part is reality. You start with actions. If your beliefs manage your actions, then if you think the right thoughts and you bring in the right inputs and you have the right beliefs, the ones that will help you express your IKIGAI, then your actions will follow. And your actions will be an amazing testament to what you brought into your mind in the first place. If you do habits long enough over time, if you keep going habitually, do things, the same action over and over again, it becomes a habit. Conventional wisdom says it takes about 7 weeks to change a daily habit. So imagine that your thought work, monitoring and controlling your inputs, becomes the first habit you change. It'll take you about 2 months to really change your inputs to begin to change the outcomes you say you want. Your outcomes should be an expression of IKIGAI, the reason why you wake up each morning. So if we start this process and we get to this break where our actions and our our beliefs and our actions are at loggerheads, we really should be fixing the beliefs, not the actions. Once we resolve the beliefs, the actions flow, and here's what happens. Actions repeated over time become habits, and habits are really what determine our outcomes. See, this whole cycle of free your engine thoughts and your caboose will follow outcomes has been taught to us backwards. We actually have a problem in that we put the caboose ahead of the engine, which is why this is titled IKIGAI, the key to everything. If you know your IKIGAI, that's the animating presence in your life, the thing for which you were created, the reason why you exist, what wakes you up in the morning. Then you have the reason to begin to shape your inputs. Now we look at our inputs, step by step. What is coming into my mind? What is influencing my thoughts? What is making me say or do things that are not consistent with what I believe I am? I take those inputs and I begin to think thoughts based on those inputs. Those inputs then, over time, become thoughts that become habits, or excuse me, beliefs. And those beliefs, as they track over time, influence our actions. And if we're consistent between belief and action, and they enmesh, the physiological and psychological discomfort goes away. But what happens is, because that physiological and psychological comfort goes away, we begin to habitually do the actions. Those actions as habits will then generate the outcomes we say we seek. Whether or not you understand the key to everything before today, you understand it now because we've gone through it. And the point is, we can't change a habit until we look at the reason why we have a habit, which is a belief. And if we understand where our beliefs come from, which are the inputs we bring into our mind, we can influence those first. If you want to be a doctor, some people say you just have to study harder. That's a change in habit. The problem is, changing a habit means we have to take a look at the individual actions that lead up to that habit. And so a lot of people will try to flip the train around and put the caboose first. I want to be a doctor, they'll say. And they'll say, well, I need to study to be a doctor. And then they'll stop there and try their hardest to study, and not go back a few more steps and take a look at what it takes for them to change the habit of studying by looking at the individual actions that are made up of that study habit. And then they have to take a look at the beliefs that would encourage or discourage studying actions. Those beliefs then are looked at from the lens of which thoughts am I looking at in myself over time? And then what inputs are there? So if I want to be a doctor, the first thing I should be doing is reading medical articles and listening to doctors talk and following political events that are heavily influencing the medical profession. And I should be willing to give myself the benefit of the inputs that will shape my thoughts. Being a doctor is an outcome that should be an expression of IKIGAI. I exist to heal others. When I say that, that is my IKIGAI, the reason why I wake up. The expression of that is becoming a doctor. It could be that I become a counselor or even a lay minister, or it could be that I'm just a peer who is learned in ways to help others. It could be that I'm a nutritionist or a naturopath, or it could mean that I'm a therapist. These things that we're trying to do, they come with consistent practice. So the first part of the practice is simply to understand who I am, why I exist. And from that, create the inputs that will begin to shape the entire key to everything, that will free my engine, and then my caboose will follow. And to remember that we never put the caboose ahead of the engine, especially when we're trying to go uphill. If you've ever seen a train try to push itself uphill, you will see a failed proposition. Trains do not push. You can't push a rope uphill. And a train is just a long rope. What you can do, however, is put the engine in front of the caboose, and then wherever that engine goes, the train and caboose are sure to follow. I need us as Brazen Creatives to remember this. When I discovered my IKIGAI, my entire life changed. When you know who you are, everything changes. But to do that, to understand that, as I've done in the other 2 lessons, I'll do again, we have to go over these 5 reflection questions and take time. Time to understand who we are, why we exist, and what we care about. The things that make us wake up in the morning. I promise you, when my grandfather took care of his family, he did not need an alarm clock. My father doesn't need an alarm clock either. My grandfather knew why he woke every morning, so he didn't need an alarm clock because he knew he was getting out of bed to make it happen. These days, I don't need an alarm clock either. I'm up because every day I get a chance to express the very best of who I am. And I get excited for that. And this lesson, this is one of my favorite lessons. I had so much fun developing this lesson. I had so much fun. I shared it with a lot of people before. I'm sharing it with you. And I got such good feedback because people began to understand more about who they were and how they could interact. And so when I give you the reflection questions, take your time and think about why you wake up each morning. We've said in another lesson that there are only 2 reasons to work. Either work is your passion or it funds your passion. Either you are living for the thing you love to do and you call that work, or the thing that you call work allows you to live and do the thing you love to do. If you're not doing those two things, I would say another word, but my sister won't let me, so it's junk. The only two reasons you exist in terms of work, to either live that passion and make it work for you, or fund that passion and live it to the best of your ability. IKIGAI, the key to everything, helps us uncover what that is. It helps us frame and focus who we are. And then it helps us go through the process of shaping our inputs, thoughts, and beliefs in such a way that our actions, habits, and outcomes reflect the very best of who we are. I'll give you the 5 reflection questions. Take your time and look at them. Review them, and then think. Spend time with them. Mull them over, chew on them. As I said earlier, if you need to yell at me, it's okay. I won't mind. And I'm not telling you not to yell at me when it becomes online, or if you ever see me in person. Let's have a conversation, because this stuff is hard. And for some of us, uncovering Ikigai is going to be a lifetime. And so I will tell you that Ikigai, if you don't know it and you don't know how to get to it, the process of learning it is your Ikigai. And that's okay too. It took me a lifetime to figure out how to say what I'm saying to you. And so as we go through the reflection questions and you don't have an answer, don't get frustrated. Just think about it. 1. Complete the phrase, I believe, 3 times. Each time, force yourself to answer differently and as quickly as you can. Don't think about the answer, just say the words and write down what follows immediately. I believe, write it down. I believe, write it down. I believe, write it down. 2, why do you believe what you do? Are those beliefs shaped by a conscious decision to accept the thoughts and inputs that preceded them? Who influenced your inputs to help shape those beliefs? Did they have your best interests at heart? If not, now that you know that, are those beliefs still valid? 3, what are your 3 most powerful inputs? When you think about them, do they help you or do they hurt you in achieving your goals and dreams? Do they distract you? 4, what is your Ikigai? If you don't know, are you actively working on or uncovering it in your life? Why or why not? Is there any fear or anxiety when you think about Ikigai? Write down what you feel when you consider a life in pursuit or realization of your Ikigai. 5, name one thing you would like to achieve at the end of this course. Is that thing in alignment with your Ikigai? Or is it based on the scale given to you by someone else? There's no wrong answer here. The process of discovery can be very personal, but once you do it, everything changes. Is your answer changed based on your thoughts and answers from above? These reflection questions allow you to take the time to think about what you will be as you discover or uncover your Ikigai. Dive into it. Have fun with it. I'll see you in the next lesson.